Okay, hello. It's Paul Green doing another one of our Focus on panels today, where I'm joined by Julie and Mari, and Serena's having a few technical problems, but hopefully she'll be joining us as soon as she can, but we'll leave her on the screen for the time being. So the idea of these sessions is just to have an open discussion and take questions from the floor. So if you're tuning into this live, or if you're tuning in on a replay, you can put comments in whatever social media platform you're on, and we can answer it live, hopefully, or get back to it on the replay wherever you're watching this. So before we crack on, if we just go around the room and let people introduce themselves. So Julie, why don't you go first?
Thank you. So hi everybody, I am Julie Futcher and I'm from the Sales Ace. What I do is I help businesses increase their revenue through sales training and sales consultancy services.
Thank you very much. And Mari?
Thank you, Paul. I'm Mari Richardson of Tom Rum Team Coaching, and I'm a team performance coach. I work with growing leadership teams to help them achieve more and become more aligned. I specialise in scaling up businesses where leadership development may have been not a top priority for some time, and it's time to start developing those leaders within the business. And that's me.
Okay, and we'll let Serena introduce herself when she gets here. So, oops, I should have left that there for a while. So the topic today is looking at overcoming lack of confidence and imposter syndrome. Puts his teeth back in, and I think it's quite an interesting lineup today, because I think you're all doing different things in different domains, but all of them I think do have an element of people lacking in confidence, or you having to work them on their confidence. So it's quite a good lineup. So it'd be interesting to sort of see what you have to say on the topic. So for anybody listening, does anybody want to let viewers know what imposter syndrome is, just in case they don't know what it is, or shall I do that?
Well, go on, Paul, you do that.
My moment of fame. So,
yeah, go on, go for it.
So imposter syndrome refers to an experience of believing that you're not as competent as others perceive you to be. So whatever it is that you're doing, you just feel that you're not as good as other people. Hence the sort of like word imposter, and that's usually linked to confidence and belief in yourself. So let us just remove the title now so we can see your names. So Julie, I'll come to you first. In the domain, I guess the biggest thing that you come across is people having a fear of sales, and that's the thing that you sort of focus on helping people overcome. And I guess that is confidence to a certain extent. So how do you work with people to overcome their fear of sales?
So this is an interesting one. Overcoming a fear of sales tends, when people talk to me about sales, I'm not a natural salesperson. Sales is scary. And for me, it's actually stripping back what sales actually is. And if you think what sales actually is, it's helping people for money. I help people resolve their problems. Sales is about understanding someone's needs, wants, issues, and problems, and offering up a solution. So that's how I overcome fear of sales. I think sometimes in the discussions that we have during these times, and also when we're looking at sales planning for businesses, this imposter syndrome comes out. And this is something that I personally can relate to, because when I set up previous business as sales manager, I wasn't a qualified trainer, in inverted commas, and I'd done a lot of research on LinkedIn about who my competition would be, what other people's offerings are. And I was seeing all of these sales trainers out on the marketplace that had lots of letters after their names and was training. And I crawled away in a corner and never, very, very nearly gave up on it. And it was about 2 o'clock one morning, because it was playing on my mind. I went back into these LinkedIn profiles and had a look. And actually what I discovered was, as much as these people had all these fancy schmancy letters after their name, when I dug into their backgrounds, they hadn't ever sold anything, or they had been far removed from the coalface of selling for a very, very long time. And what it enabled me to do was to actually think about how I was different. So I've always said I'm a salesperson first and a trainer second. I'm still a jobbing saleswoman. So that really helped me, I suppose, just get a grip, and actually help me through that imposter sort of syndrome that I was going through.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Serena's gone. Maybe she'll come back. Mari, you're addressing this from a coaching perspective, I guess. So how have you overcome issues with confidence, either with one-to-one coaching or the teams that you work with?
I think everybody struggles to some degree. It just varies. Interestingly, my take on imposter syndrome is slightly different. Generally speaking, people who suffer the most with imposter syndrome are quite high achieving, which is why Julie would have suffered. And one of the things is the reason that they feel that, God dear, I'm struggling with my words today too, is that sometimes people, it's not difficult for them. And because it's not difficult, they feel it's not worthy of praise. So that's quite a common theme, is that because people are good at something, they find it easy. Therefore, when they have their own self-doubts, and you give them praise, they reject that praise, because to them, they're not having to work particularly hard or do anything particularly special. So that's something that I've certainly experienced, not just in myself, but in other people that I've worked with. And I think it's quite an interesting confidence as well, in terms of, I'm not a big fan of labeling things, so I'm not, I would never say that I suffered from imposter syndrome. I would say, oh, hi, Serena.
Hi, Serena, she's made it.
But I think if you give yourself a label sometimes, then you're giving yourself a reason to not change something. And I think it's the same with confidence. If it's, if people have always told you lack confidence, guess what? You'll lack confidence. And the journey to make things better is very much a little steps, and just pushing those little boundaries every so often. But I will let Serena introduce herself and join the conversation.
Hi, Serena. Well done sorting out the technical issues. So, do you just want to introduce yourself to the room and let people know who you are and what you do?
Sure, yes, thanks, Paul. So my name is Serena Mann, the creator of Breakthrough Public Speaking, and I help business owners speak with confidence on camera for videos that attract their ideal clients. And get through your technology problems, don't worry. We'll take them live a little bit later if you need to.
We like a challenge. I'll come to you in a minute, Serena. So just carrying on with you, Mari, if I may. So in a team environment, then, do you find the dynamics are such that some people's confidence are affected by the people that might be overconfident in the group? Do you find that it has an added impact if you're working with a team?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, 100%. And a lot of what I do with teams is to really address that balance, to give a voice to those who feel unheard, and yes, sometimes to shut the others up, but also to make them understand that the impact they're having, because sometimes those over talkers are also lacking in confidence. They just think if they shout the loudest for the longest, nobody will question what they're saying. Nobody will have the time to interrupt them and say, well, actually, I'm not sure that is correct. So it is within teams particularly, it's about being transparent, and getting people to kindly explain how they're impacting each other.
I think with business owners, and it's business owners, I see more of the imposter syndrome rather than people employed into sales roles. It tends to, it can eradicate over time once they start to see the value of what they're doing and the impact that they're having to their particular customers. one of the things I always really strongly suggest they do is look for referrals and testimonials. Because, yeah, they're great for social media, they're great for advertising, but actually customers actually reaching out and saying what you've done, the impact you've had on your business, really does help you start to believe a little bit more in yourself and your confidence. So when you do have those wobbles, you've got something to fall back on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I also thought your comment, Mari, about high achievers suffering from it is a really interesting one, and I'd never thought about it in that way. I think added to me, if I think about my own personal circumstances, there was the fear of failure in there.
Yeah.
Which has one question, Mari, where we're talking about sort of people within teams. How much does personality types come into what you look at?
Well, I tend to work more with behavioural, how people behave, and confidence isn't a personality trait as such. We do a lot of things which level the playing field, I think is probably the easiest way to put it. And a lot of what I do is facilitation. And in order to do that effectively, obviously you have to get consensus from the group. And for a team to work well, they have to appreciate each other.
Yeah.
So the loud must appreciate the quiet. The frank must appreciate the diplomatic. It's, you've got to get those balance right and understand that actually this team needs all of those skills together. And at the same time, that raises the skill level in everyone because it balances their skills out a little bit. So
yeah, interesting. Yeah, interesting.
So Serena, now we've got you. So I guess confidence comes up a lot in the work that you're doing with people. I know we've been on sessions before where you talked about presentation skills, and one of my things was certainly when we moved into lockdown, going on to virtual, is the confidence of being in front of a camera. Just that initial sort of thing. It's sort of like a forced thing, I guess, for most of us. We just had to do it because otherwise our business would just disappear if we hadn't gone virtual. So what's been your experience with people, and how do you help them overcome their fears or their confidence issues when presenting?
Sure, thanks, Paul. I think one of the things to appreciate first of all is that it's really, really normal and natural to feel uncomfortable speaking in front of people and on camera, and that it's a very specific skill as well. I think sometimes we can assume that we should just be able to do this. Why can't I just do this? And then we can feel that we're the only one or that we lack confidence. But I know lots of really confident speakers who are happy to speak in front of a few thousand who shy away from the camera. It's something that can make you feel very vulnerable, very uncomfortable, especially if it's going out there to the world or it's being recorded and so, or it's alive. That can make you feel uncomfortable and vulnerable. So what I help people with is really to acknowledge, honestly, you don't have to declare it to the world if you don't want to, but just acknowledge and accept the feelings that you're experiencing. So I think so often we try to bury them, or we want to deny they're there, or there's this expression especially in the field of public speaking where you say fake it until you make it. I personally don't like that expression at all, and it's not something I ever tell myself before I'm speaking. And I think if you tell yourself something like that, then all kinds of other fears can arise because you feel I'm not really good enough, but I'm doing this presentation, and then you can have this sort of inner conflict that's arising. So I think one of the things that's important is to honestly acknowledge your feelings and appreciate that, this is a new skill. It takes a bit of practice. I'm not going to be perfect the first time I do it. It takes a bit of practice, and there's something involved in just being able to be natural on camera, because if you're doing a video, for instance, and it's just you and the camera, it's really hard to feel enthusiastic, where of course you would feel enthusiastic in front of a live audience. So there's a lot to it, but overall it's acknowledging your feelings and then practicing and taking the right steps for you. So if you feel really, really worried, then I never suggest, just go for it, just do it, post a video to the world if it's your first video. Just take one baby step forward, and that's good enough. So show show it to a friend or get some feedback from someone who knows about speaking. So then you feel more confident about it, and then post it on your social media. So take the right steps for you. But overall, I think what people fear is that they become more wooden, they become more unnatural, they speak in different ways. And I think that's just so normal when you start speaking on camera, and it's just to expect that. I think if you don't expect it, then you think there's something wrong with you, and there's just nothing wrong in this scenario. This is completely normal. I started this way. I wish I'd kept the first videos that I did, because it was literally just me with this blank face. Hi, I'm Serena. You know, and I was, well, that is not me. This is often how we start, and that's okay. It's a process, so we don't need to be perfect first round. It's a process. The first thing is just to try to be natural and identify those fears, work through it, and go through a process of becoming more confident, and then take some action, of course, because when you post your video or you deliver a webinar or something, you just feel so much more confident as a result, and that will help tremendously.
I think you picked up on a really good point, Serena, about taking baby steps. You know, certainly in the sales arena, and when I'm working with people who are not comfortable with sales, there's a number of things that I find with them. Number one, they feel they should, and this word "should" comes out a lot. They should be doing this. They should be doing that. They compare themselves. Just before you came on, I was talking about it for myself. But you have to learn that a new skill takes time to master. When I had my sales teams and I was doing telemarketing, I used to hate sitting in amongst them actually doing telesales calls, because I've got 20 odd years of experience, and that becomes a honed skill. I almost wish they could have seen me at day one, when I used to have to be locked in an office and bribed with chocolate to actually pick up the phone, because I was so scared. So it is about the journey you go on and the process that you do and the practice. And the more you do something, the more your confidence raises. But I think it's having that, and it is a bit of bravery, just taking that first step and not being afraid to fail. I think, you know, failure is a dirty word, but I know from my life, people could look at certain things and say they were failures. But for me, I don't call them failures. I call them learning opportunities.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. Failure is great. It's a learning opportunity, because absolutely. Those are the key times in your life that you really take on those lessons. And I think definitely we need to sort of reframe the whole idea of failure and making mistakes. Somehow we think that it's just not okay. I mustn't make mistakes, and I almost mustn't be seen to be someone who's just starting out, or I just have to be perfect, you know, right from the start, which of course is an unrealistic expectation, which can make us feel even more anxious and stressed.
20 years, Julie, you must have started when you were 12.
I was. I'll pay you later, Paul.
Mara.
Yeah, just a couple of things I wanted to point at, sort of pick up on. Julie was talking about keeping those client reviews, those positive comments, and Serena was saying that, you know, you just have to accept your fears. And one of the things that I work on is that self-critical voice. You know, nobody is ever as hard on you as you are yourself. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you've got to silence those voices, but that doesn't work. You have to accept that those voices are there, and then basically say, yes, I know, but actually this person thought what I did was fantastic. And I think culturally, I think it depends where you are in the world, and my sphere of reference is quite small. But I think certainly in this country, that bigging yourself up isn't something we do naturally.
No.
So it, you know, and in my family, it's definitely not something you do naturally. And you know, you sort of, well, do you think you are getting a bit too big for your boots? That sort of attitude is like, keep yourself down, just, you know, keep a low profile.
But isn't it funny that is the culture? Because I think that's sad in some degree in this modern world, that we still have that. I love to see people doing well. I love to see people achieving. because I think this is fantastic, you know, particularly if they've taken major leaps to do something different and put themselves out there. It's just sad, isn't it? It's just sad that that is still around.
But I think it's also, it maintains, because some people appear outwardly confident but inwardly aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are putting others down in order to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
And I think while you still have that behavior,
Yeah.
so they, you know, imagine you are that high achiever who's got imposter syndrome, and your boss can see that you are absolutely smashing it, and rather than supporting you, is saying, well, actually, I don't want them to get, you know, too far ahead, so I'll just, you know, slide in a few little, oh, who do you think you are, sort of, you know, let's just keep it down low, and that kind of thing. So I mean, hopefully there are fewer and fewer employers like that. But I think for the employed people, there is a fear, and I think a lot of this comes out of fear of losing your job, fear of looking stupid, and we all do strange things when we're afraid. I think it's fair to say.
True, very true.
Yeah, Debbie's made a comment about people seem to embellish people's weaknesses. I think for me, it's who you surround yourself with. I think, you know, if you surround yourself with people that are going to be negative, then I think ultimately, you know, that can impact you and your view and how you feel about yourself. So I think, you know, I was introduced to the concept of this people out there, you know, they're either drains or radiators, and you really want to surround yourself with radiators rather than drains. You know, certain people walk into a room and there's almost like a vacuum, isn't it? Sort of,
Yeah.
and that's not the type of people that you want to be around. And there are, we used to have some meetings with another organisation as part of, but we used to call them BMW sessions, and it was bitching, moaning, and whinging, and that's all it was. And you don't really want to go to a meeting, you know, coming away feeling really depressed because, you know, people have just been bitching, moaning, and whinging about whatever it might be. And I'm not saying, you know, not to be realistic about what's going on in your life or your business or anything like that, but it's just, you know, you don't have to focus on the negative all the while. And I think certainly, you know, touching on what you were saying, Julia, over the recent years in lockdown, certainly when people were struggling, it was quite hard for people to say, well, yeah, I'm doing okay, because you felt, you know, a little bit embarrassed that you know, not you personally, but one was doing okay. And I think, you know, you should still celebrate the successes, as well as acknowledging, you know, some of the things that aren't working so well at the end of the day. But it, you know, I think, you know, you've got to, back to what I said, I think you've got to surround yourself with nurturing people that, you know, will acknowledge your weaknesses or where things aren't going well for you. And, you know, to one extent, you know, try and big you up, or at least give you the confidence that you can overcome it and you can move forward. So, yeah, I think it's very much about who you surround yourself. So I don't know what you guys think about that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes, see, I'm such an optimist. I would always want to convert the drains into radiators. Sorry, Serena.
Serena, you can say something.
It's a great point about that, you know, who you surround yourself with. And it's one of the things that I do, you know, help my clients with in terms of who they're getting feedback from. So if you're developing a new skill, for instance, it's so important to make sure you're listening to the right feedback, because there will be people who will either just say, you're amazing, yeah, great video, just post it, or the opposite, you know, that's really bad, I don't think you should post that. And you don't really want to be listening to people who don't know about that particular skill, for instance, or just people you trust, whether it's your business mentors or whatever, so that you know that their opinion is good. I think you mentioned, Paul, about, you know, that they'll tell you where you need to improve and on what you're doing well. And for me, that's so important. With the people I surround myself with are people who will tell me where I need to improve and what I'm doing well. And it's that honest feedback, people you trust, because I think we all need that. I don't believe in this idea that there are just people who are just completely confident, you know, without needing anyone or any feedback. Well, if they are, then they could be quite dangerous, because I think we naturally have this feeling of wanting approval and wanting to make sure we're doing things correctly and so on. So I think it's a very positive thing to surround yourself with people who offer you quality feedback.
Yeah. I see it quite a lot in the sales worlds, that there are businesses that do it exceedingly well, and there are businesses that do it exceedingly badly. You know, I've had many a conversation with some MDs, business owners that have sales teams, and some of the conversations I've had around motivation, recompense for their sort of their what they're doing, training, additional growth. No, they're only salespeople. So it is interesting. I think Debbie's just posted in there, positivity breeds good success, and I actually agree with that. You know, in any environment, particularly in sales. So yeah, it is about that. It's about that positivity. It's about that who you surround with. It's about how that's communicated. And when you've got somebody that drags everything down, it's surprising how one person can bring down a whole team. And you've probably seen this, Mari. You could have a whole team of, say, 20 really positive people, but the 21st person is, you know, moaning Minnie, and the whole team goes down.
I think positivity occasionally is overused. I think you have to have a chunk of reality. It's no good saying, you know, to the person grieving, everything's going to be okay. It's not. And I think that's something within teams, you know, it's about being real. It's about saying, you know, I really don't like it when you speak to me like that. And, you know, the other person will say, well, how do you want me to speak to you? And, you know, so actually opening up those conversations. I mean, I think most issues can be resolved with good conversations, but we're not really built that way, I don't think. I think
people see that as conflict though, don't they? And you know that some people don't like conflict and don't know how to have those types of conversations without there being negative emotion brought in.
Well, because 9 times out of 10 we pile up a whole list of things that we want to talk about or that are upsetting us or we're not happy with, and we go in armed to the teeth with all of this negativity, and one thing comes out, which is probably just the tip of the iceberg, but because that will come out so negatively and aggressively, you never get to talk to, you know, about all the other little things. And it's sort of creating those opportunities where you can openly talk about the little things as they happen, rather than letting it build up into this massive like exploding volcano, really. So. But yes, Debbie, it's hard to say that to a boss. Very much so. But again, I think you kind of, with those conversations with a boss, that's when you know, it's like, I'm like this when I go to the doctor. I go to the doctor when I have 6 things wrong with me, because I can't be bothered to go to the doctor, or I don't want to raise it with the doctor. I don't want to be a pain in the neck, whatever. So I go in, I say, well, I've got this. Oh, and this, and this, and this. And they're like, well, you know, really needed 6 appointments for this. And I think we do that. We tend to do that with our bosses. And I was listening to somebody whose name is escaping me at the moment, and he was talking about feed forward rather than feedback. And you know, how you should reinforce people ahead of time. It shouldn't be, oh, by the way, this is your feedback.
Yeah.
But feedback can be and is quite often positioned as a negative. You know, we talk about positive feedback, but most people go, okay, what's the feedback? What are you going to hit me with now? And I quite like that idea of, you know, feeding it forward, saying ahead of time without consequence, this isn't necessarily an improvement exercise. But you know, we also have to deal with when things aren't right. So we have to be able to have those conversations too.
Absolutely.
And I think often we can be so afraid of those negative feelings within us, and we can really ignore the sort of our mind. And we say things when or let's say we're angry, when in reality, if we were calm, then we could still say those same things and they would just come out that much better. And I loved what you were saying, Murray, about, you know, this idea of positivity and being grounded in reality, because that's a huge thing. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about, you know, being positive thinking, that you're just only going to think positive things and say positive things, when that can be really unhealthy. So if you're you know, delivering a talk, for instance, or you're feeling stressed, that's just one example. Instead of just telling yourself, and again, this is a huge myth, you know, just tell yourself you're great, you're the best, you're just going to nail it. I mean, it has its place, but you could also say, all right, so right now some feelings of anxiety are arising. You know, I feel really worried about this, and just acknowledge that you're feeling that way. And that's not negative thinking. You're just being grounded in reality. And in that way, I think you can support yourself better through the whole process, because you're grounded in reality. You know that you're feeling anxious. You're going to support yourself by adapting whatever tools you want that works for you. And then you speak from that place of being really grounded. And I think that's also how you lessen the likelihood of imposter syndrome going on. And then when we're communicating with others, we're coming from this more grounded, peaceful place, instead of, you know, repressing the feelings or thinking that we need to say all these wonderful positive things when we don't think that or feel it. So I think that being honest with ourselves and being grounded in reality is so important for our confidence, in terms of our own speaking and how we're relating to others.
I agree. So any last comments, guys, before we sort of wrap this up for today?
I think I just wanted to, when it comes to building confidence, some of the things that have worked really well for my clients, I guess. I'm a big one about accepting compliments. I am not good at this, but it's that, you know, if somebody goes to the trouble of paying you a compliment and then you bat it away, guess what? You're probably not going to get another one.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's just say thank you. Quite often we tend to say, oh, thanks, but you know, it really wasn't any, you know, even my daughter got married at the weekend, and one of the guests was saying to me at the end of the evening, you know, it was such a wonderful wedding, thank you so much for inviting us, you've done a great job. And I was like, thank you, it was absolutely nothing to do with me, but thank you for saying so. And then I thought, oh, you know, you're not supposed to say that, but yeah, so I think that's, but also when we talked about tiny steps earlier, it's just, you know, doing that one thing that makes you a little bit uncomfortable every day, and a new thing every day.
Yeah, agreed.
And give yourself time.
Yeah.
That's my message always, is instead of not saying it, just breathe and then say it.
Agreed.
So,
yeah, I think the accepting praise thing, that was always my issue. You know, if someone gave me some praise, I'd make a joke about it or dismiss it or say, you know, it's divert it somewhere else. Whereas, and I don't know whether that's a British thing or you know, a cultural thing or whatever. But yeah, I think you do notice a difference if you actually let that praise sink in, don't you? You know, you actually do acknowledge it more rather than just sort of saying a dismissive comment or a quip around it. And I think, you know, if more people did that, it might be, you know, little steps towards people building their confidence in wherever they're being acknowledged or bigged up, as it were.
Agreed.
Anyway, on that note, thank you, ladies, for joining me today. Thanks for overcoming your technical issues, Serena. I'm glad we got you live and in picture in the end.
Thank you very much.
The next session we're looking at, we're having a finance focus, and we're going to look at some of the mistakes that small businesses make in their financial journey of running a small business. So that's what we're doing next time. So see some of you there. Bye for now.
See ya.